Dyer back. I've been waiting for something special to happen to invite him on, and oh my goodness, he's live streaming 10 plus hours a day right now on the Epstein Files. Jay's got almost a couple 100,000 subs on his YouTube channel. All of his links are in the description box. And he's a specialist in esoteric Hollywood, analyzing movies like Eyes Wide Shut, secret societies, cults, symbolism, the cult of Baal. We'll be talking about with Epstein, funneling the money over to the Baal account. And Nick Bryant just sent me an email. He said he's found some of the most disgusting things in the Epstein file: genetic editing of babies, Rothschilds paying Epstein 25 million, FBI 302 stating Epstein introduced Melania to Trump, and on and on and on it goes. So, Jay, when this dropped, what's stuck out the most to you so far, my friend?
Well, I was live streaming when it began to leak out, and I thought this will be another one of those nothing burgers like the last three, leaks or whatever. So I didn't really pay much attention to it, but I kind of had it, a browser open. And then as it was dropping, every minute I was refreshing, and it was like, this is like the biggest thing in news ever, perhaps, especially, maybe going back to like JFK or the Big 9 event. This is like confirming everything that we have talked about. I know that the first time I read a book about the Bilderbergs was 1998. And I was like, this is weird. There's a Bilderberg group and these elite people, billionaires meet and they plan stuff. And, a couple years after that, I read another book about ritual abuse, and that kind of hipped me to this subject. But I never would have dreamed that, 26, 7, 8 years later, we would see this massive release of just every single minute when you refresh Twitter. It's another, this would have been a headline story for 2 weeks 10 years ago in the news. And now it's every freaking minute. So I feel completely vindicated. Obviously, I'm not happy that this is the way the world actually works. But I think you and I both know, after many, many years of covering this kind of material, reading all kinds of books on this is unfortunately the way the world really works. It's run by large level, high tier criminal syndicates. They operate at the highest tiers of finance, banking, government, media, celebrities. They're all essentially compromised. Everything that we have talked about is now vindicated within the last 5 days of these leaks. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Imagine what we don't know. Imagine what has been censored, because these leaks obviously aren't everything. So yeah, we are completely vindicated in the conspiracy sphere. People can nitpick. I see a lot of mainstream journos and the blue checkmark liars, the frauds, the shills, the Israel shills. They're all saying, "Oh, don't look at it. It doesn't matter." Ben Shapiro,
it's nothing. It's nothing. It's all facts. It's not facts. It's all rumors.
Well, that's because he obviously is the mouthpiece for the establishment. So I'm 100% happy to finally be vindicated.
Yeah. So, the various names have come out, and people have been prosecuted legally. Jean-Luc Brunel was arrested, Epstein, Maxwell, etc. But above all that, like you have alluded to, there is an apparatus. Do you think that the people below the apparatus are being sacrificed right now, and the apparatus just continues unblemished?
Where it's going, that's a really difficult question, because I did not expect this much to come out. And again, it's not, there's no telling what else we're going to find. So I don't know what's going to happen, or even a lot of people have asked me, why did this get released right now? What's the timing? We know we had Democrats saying that they wanted this released, a lot of high profile Democrats and celebrities. Then when it came out, they were like, actually pull it down, edit this, stop this, please. Even Tom Hanks, right? Tom Hanks was like, "Oh, please don't, let's not do this. I'm going to move to Greece if this comes out." We know that Jay-Z immediately deleted all of his Instagram and reportedly left the country. I don't know if that's exactly, I haven't confirmed that, but I did go and confirm that his Instagram is completely blank. So he had nothing there except for one photo. So I think the most important thing is to realize, first of all, the way the world actually works is through an interlocking network of finance, media, banking, corporations, heads of state. They coordinate at a high level with fixers and consultants and what you might say are PhDs in organized crime. A lot of people are discussing, was Epstein actually that intelligent? He seems kind of weird at times, almost drunk or high in a lot of these messages and videos. He's the bags of pills, which were probably for, MK Ultra style, drugging other people. I think he's a lot of things. He's a con man. Obviously, he's working for the Mossad at a very high level and other intelligence agencies. He says in one of the emails he works with former British intelligence people. He's working flying CIA planes for decades. So this is a super high level fixer tied into the royals. We even saw things coming out about Epstein perhaps having meetings with Princess Di that might have factored into it. There's another book that not many people are familiar with that I read many years ago that I've been citing before Whitney Webb's book came out, before any of our books came out. In 1999, Gordon Thomas wrote a book called Gideon Spies. And in that book, he theorized that there was this high-level network that's tied into the Mossad. They were even tied into the Vatican. There's a whole chapter on John Paul II and the Mossad meeting with him to recognize and legitimate the state of Israel, which happened under the watch of John Paul II. We know that there's emails talking about John Paul II spending time in the papal palace, reportedly in an apartment living, Epstein living there at the papacy or at Rome for an unknown amount of time. There's another email where Epstein says he was given something by John Paul II as a gift in his house. So we know they had some degree of familiarity. And again, what this points to is high-level international Spectre, Blofeld level compromising on anyone they can get, torture, 8mm Nick Cage level stuff. It's all real. And that's how the world really works, even to the point of, did you see the Somalia one? That was a crazy one. So
please expand on that.
Yeah, so basically years ago, before all of the controversy about the Somali migrants and whatnot in the various Western countries, Epstein had a series of emails discussing how Somalia could be targeted and basically graped for its natural resources. This was back in like 2014 or so. So that explains how they look at regions, they see the natural resources, they go in, they steal them, they create war, and then they also have large pools of humans to traffic and tap into. There was another email about Thailand, and it said there's 1 million young displaced people, a pool of 1 million kids for you to tap into, Jeffrey. And it goes even beyond this into the email from the Asian guy, you or whoever that was, saying, hey, Jeff, I met this young sexually abused girl. She seems to be at stage 3 in the process, and she's developing certain techniques and abilities. This perfectly aligns with what we've researched in the conspiracy world in regard to MK Ultra sex kitten programming, Delta programming. It's a little ambiguous. We don't exactly know what's going on, but there is this guy, again, recruiting, scouting, and we see Epstein himself, along with Brunel that you mentioned. They're scouting out models at all age groups. There's one email where Epstein says, let me get a couple twins. I wish I had babies that are twins so that I could experiment on them with lines, vertical and horizontal. So he wanted to do like mind control, mad scientist experiments to see the effects epigenetically of how different environments would raise or condition children. I presume because of the transhumanist stuff, the desire to study sperm. We know there was offers of pints of blood from Mormons, and that might make sense with the fact that the Mormons, obviously, for a long time are connected to the CIA. Many Mormon missionaries have been recruited and used as CIA operatives, and the Mormons have a gigantic DNA facility. So probably that's what Epstein was interested in tapping into. And of course, a lot of the stuff at the Zorro Ranch is just equally as insane. It's hard to even keep up with all of it. I thought it was also relevant that he was going to Ukraine 1 month before Zelensky was installed. And there's that exchange between Ariana de Rothschild where he says, we can actually get in on this Ukraine crisis and profit as the country falls into chaos. We can buy up stuff, etc. Same thing with the Greek bailouts, or excuse me, with the Greek debt crisis and the bailouts in the EU. They were saying, this is going to be great chaos. We can come in with a fire sale and buy it all up. And I remember at the time I was watching Max Kaiser was covering that on his RT show as it happened. And he said, this is a scam by the Western IMF, World Bank to destroy Greece economically, buy it up by private interests. And now we know that Epstein was actually intimately involved in that. He was intimately involved in planning meetings with Bibi Netanyahu. He's intimately involved in planning flights for Pope Francis, meetings with John Paul II. I mean, this is just the biggest thing ever. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, I can keep going, but I don't want to like monopolize the time here. Go ahead.
No, ideally, I don't see anything. But let me just say to the viewers, we've got over 3,000 watching live right now. Jay's been a friend of the channel for many years, folks. He's had his share of cancellations because of speaking about this kind of stuff. So support his links, his YouTube, his X, Instagram website. I put them all in the live chat. And if you're watching on replay, they're in the description box. We're live with Jay. So if you've got any questions right now for him, he's an expert on esoteric Hollywood, you know, the symbolism, etc. And get your questions in the chat.
One little neat little tidbit here was, you know, I keep thinking back to the Rothschild masked balls. Remember those photos that came out from the 60s and 70s, and everybody speculated for a long time about these. Well, it turns out we were spot on speculating about those masked balls and those parties. And in a lot of these emails, we see everything from the possibility of human hunting, hostile type stuff. I mean, it's not exactly clear what they mean in every one of these emails, but we can kind of decipher for sure. Man, the elite sure do love freaking pizza, dude. They're all over pizza and grape soda. Maybe they just love American junk food. No, come on. This is, in many cases, code words. And I want to say, if you look at my first chapter of my book, Esoteric Hollywood, the first chapter says, hey, why is it that the Rothschilds seem to pop up in so many films and in so many palaces with masked balls and Eyes Wide Shut, Ninth Gate with Johnny Depp? Turns out they're doing satanic rituals. They're doing blood rituals. They're doing everything that you could think of, including sexual compromise. And that's also a part of Eyes Wide Shut. If you don't recall, they're trying to basically compromise Tom Cruise and get him kind of, you know, involved in it. This was chapter 1 of my book 10 years ago. I said, I think this is real. And what do we have now? Not only was Gordon Thomas's book basically vindicated, including the first chapter of Gordon Thomas's book from 1999, which deals with Princess Di. That's now, did you see the Princess Di stuff?
No, please expand.
That's right up your alley, Sean. So basically, I probably through Andrew, Epstein had in his closet, I don't remember if it was in New York or on the island, but he had they parted the clothes, and there was a giant framed Times article talking about Princess Di and the possibility of remarriage and divorce. This is before she passed away. And then there's a separate story that people had clipped together from mainstream media from years ago. It's hard. I think the actual Times article is behind a paywall, so nobody's really found the article yet. But he did meet her. There was this meeting between Epstein and Princess Di, and one of the articles is speculating. We don't know, but speculating that he was perhaps trying to get with her. Now, this didn't obviously happen, or as far as we know, they didn't have any offspring. However, we have the offspring, or we have the what was it, Princess of Norway? Is it the Princess of Norway saying, hey, Jeff, let's perhaps have a baby? There's speculations that they might have had a child. And she offers her son. She says, hey, can you train? I want to groom my son. Well, how do I raise and parent my child? So here's the royals. And by the way, there's another, I think it was Denmark. They were saying, hey, Jeff, here's a picture of Princess Sophia. Would you like her? So these people offer their children to Epstein to groom, to either make them into sex kitten slaves or into psychopaths who can then be like Macrons to rule the countries in the future as total psychopaths. And I have to say also, this is all vindicating Whitney Webb's great book as well, One Nation or Blackmail, Volume 2.
Yeah, I've listened to the audiobooks. Absolutely spectacular research on behalf of Whitney Webb there. So one of the people who was mentioned then, Leslie Wexner, going back to 2019, we now know there was 10 names given in. And, you know, he's pleading that he's just this senile old man, had no idea what Jeffrey was up to kind of thing. But wouldn't you say that if this was going to go up the ladder of prosecutions in terms of a conspiracy case, someone like Wexner should be looked into?
Well, that would implicate the largest Zionist organizations in the world. That would be very difficult. This would be obviously, as Whitney points out in several chapters, the mega group, which includes some of the highest level, Israeli filmmakers, producers, media people, etc. So it's hard to say what will actually come of this, but we know that all the information that's come out does back up a lot of what Whitney Webb says in her chapters on Wexner, who she kind of points out as a key player and figure in this at the finance level, right? So we know that Epstein had this story that he was a money manager or something, right? He was doing all this. He learned all this at Bear Stearns. And by the way, don't forget that the Bear Stearns stuff led to the prosecution back in late 80s, early 90s of Epstein's partner. So there was an insider trading scandal and Epstein's partner went to jail. Epstein didn't go to jail. That's around the time when he's brought into what appears to be the Rothschild Maxwell axis of running this operation of compromat, as well as other things, under the cover of things like hedge funds, financial interest, trading, money management, all that. So there's like these cutouts that are the frontispiece for another operation, which is this compromat operation. That's again, it's doing all kinds of stuff, and that vindicates as well Whitney's analysis, for example, that Maxwell was a Rothschild front, right? So Robert Maxwell was taught how to be a corporate viper, seizure takeover artist, right? And then he sort of imprinted that as well on Ghislaine and Jeffrey. So they were involved in some of that too, right? Hostile takeovers of corporations. All of that has been essentially vindicated because even all the way up until, very recently, Epstein was still saying in emails, "Oh, I represent the Rothschilds," right? He says this to Peter Thiel. We have that excellent audio discussion between Epstein and Ehud Barak. Did you hear that about how to go and talk to Peter Thiel? Why we need to get Peter Thiel on our side? We're going to meet with him. All of these emails. Basically, they're throwing out these lures, trying to catch big fish with whatever they thought might catch them, and that could be anything from young people or even worse, right? Really depends on what your proclivities might be. So Mandelson, I think Mandelson stepped down because he was obviously one of the people that got caught in this. But I would imagine there's way more people than we know about that have been caught in this net.
Yeah, you've raised so many important points there again. So with Wexner, he claimed in a 1985 New York magazine, because I know you're an expert on the esoteric.
Oh, the Dybbuk that he's possessed.
Yeah, and a Dybbuk, it said it was driving him, this demon, for intense, restless, obsessive drive for business success. It's a malicious, possessing spirit or a disembodied soul. The article describes Wexner's Dybbuk as a metaphorical entity that pokes and prods and gives him the itchiness of soul. It is used to explain why, despite becoming a billionaire, he's never felt satisfied, and he's compelled to constantly grow his empire, build and take risks. And this was the time he was trying to promote himself. He was on a PR campaign, and he's saying he's got this evil demon attached to him. What the hell?
Even I was surprised when I read that chapter in Whitney's book. I was like, he's actually admitting, and he's kind of okay with it. He's like, I don't know what to do with it, so I just kind of roll with it. I let it be my dark side, etc. But yeah, in the Jewish tradition, that's the term they use for the Hebrew term for a demon. And that was kind of the first inkling that I had noticed through Whitney's book of the possibility of an occult connection to the Epstein stuff. But I noticed as well in the Bannon interview that's come out, the 2 hours of it that's come out, when Bannon starts asking him about spirituality and this kind of stuff, and Epstein kind of acts like, well, there might actually be a devil. I'm kind of afraid of the devil, and he's like, but in my view, he's like, everything is math, everything is code, and we can tap into these other dimensions. And so he sounds like a new ager, but the more you listen to it, it's, oh, this is Kabbalah. And that explains also that email where he bitches about Madonna, and he calls her a Holly twit, that she's interested in Kabbalah, but it's like Gentile fake Kabbalah from a huckster. And he's like, we know the real secret mystical Kabbalah. And it's like, well, that puts the other stuff in a different light, like naming the bank account Baal, which is one of the Old Testament deities, right? Baal-zebub, Lord of the Flies. So that is also as you know, a human sacrifice deity in the Old Testament. When the Jews were tempted to sacrifice their youth, it was to the Canaanite deities and entities like Baal or Moloch. So those are human sacrifice entities. And the more that's coming out, no, it would not surprise me, given the fact that he did have an interest in the Kabbalah, that he has some, connection to this occult satanic realm. Although in his mind, he would just simply say, well, it's not Satanism. It's not Satanism. It's more like, it's mysticism, so he sounds just like Woody Allen, which is weird too. I didn't really expect him to sound exactly like Woody Allen, but they're like, and by the way, Woody Allen and he were very, very close. There was the email saying, oh, by the way, are you coming to the PDF convention in France? That's where we're going.
Yeah, I watched the Bannon interview in the last couple of days, and it's like they're trying to flex how intelligent they are, but they just sound like high schoolers.
They sound like nerdy, like Reddit guys talking. And by the way, they had a huge role in Reddit and 4chan. Speaking of, I forgot to mention the new atheists. It just so happens that all the new atheists, well, not all of them, but it was Pinker, and it was there's emails with him and Lawrence Krauss, and then there's Richard Dawkins is on several flights. Daniel Dennett is on several flights. So while they're feeding and promoting skepticism and atheism to the goy, they're on the other side of it talking about how we believe in Kabbalistic mysticism and tapping into other dimensions and realities and controlling spiritual forces, and all reality is a mathematical code, all this pi level stuff. If you've never seen the movie Pi, that's Darren Aronofsky put that into a movie because he's actually also into Kabbalism. So so they're not atheists, but they like to feed you the atheism to keep you stupid. Something I've said for 20 years that people have made fun of me with forever for saying.
Got over 6,000 watching live. Please subscribe to Jay's channel. I've put it in the live chat. So we had Kirby Summers on the other day, and she said one of the most interesting things she learned from the files is that the person who told Acosta that it was intelligence and it was above his pay grade was Dershowitz. What do you think about that, Jay?
That doesn't surprise me because that's, I think, the report that discusses the possibility that Kushner and Dershowitz together had some relationship with the Mossad. And I think, he says something like, I wish I could have been this, doing this when I was younger or whatever. And so I don't think that's surprising at all. I mean, Maxwell himself, by the way, was reportedly for many, many years taken out by the Mossad, and nobody really knew the full story. And there was a bombshell email where Epstein himself explains what happened to Maxwell. This is Ghislaine's dad, that his publishing empire was actually a front for multiple intelligence agencies, but primarily the Mossad originally, also British intelligence. And my good friend Mark Hacker translated a KGB colonel's article from the Cold War, where he was giving a KGB assessment of what they thought of Robert Maxwell back during the Cold War. And the Soviet assessment was that Maxwell was playing both sides during the Cold War. Shocker, right? Because we find out that some of these people seem to play both sides of conflicts, don't they? Including during the Cold War. Arm & Hammer played both sides of the West and the communists during the Cold War. We have people like Lord Rothschild potentially playing both sides during the Cold War. Well, it turns out Rothschild himself, who helped initiate Maxwell into this whole enterprise, didn't teach him good enough, because what Epstein admits in that long email about the history of Maxwell is that Maxwell turned around and tried to blackmail the Mossad and extort them for 400 million pounds. And that's what led to his untimely demise, which many people thought. And also because, as the email says, he appointed himself as the representative of Israel to the Soviets. And that's exactly what that KGB colonel's essay from the Cold War had said. So they were actually correct that this was a high-level person trying to play both sides of the conflict and then trying to extort the Mossad, which led to his demise, according to Maxwell, who presumably would know, being so close to Ghislaine.
Yeah, we had Ari Ben Menashe on last year.
Well, yeah, there you go. He said a long time ago that this was, and he's quoted in Whitney's book as well. So, yeah.
We had him on for a second interview, and he described how during the negotiations with Yasser Arafat, Epstein had compromise on Bill Clinton, and they used that with, under the Ehud Barak's leadership to scupper the peace deal with Palestine. And it just seems that, that's the results, the kind of results that Epstein was obtaining with this honey trap operation. So have you heard any more about that?
Just kind of the scant details of what you outlined there. It does look like, we had other researchers in the past. I want to say Michael Collins Piper in his books, he had theorized that Monica Lewinsky played a role with the Mossad, and that had to do with compromising Clinton, and that seems pretty likely. I know that in the Whitney Webb book, on that section, she talks about there's this recording that they had of the White House that somebody picked up through intelligence, that there was a mention of Mega says to do this. So that was theorized. Well, is this a person? Is that the name that they had for Monica Lewinsky? Was she called Mega, or is Mega a reference to the Mega group? I mean, all these things are definitely possibilities, so we don't know for sure. But also, this reportedly ties into Jonathan Pollard, the famous Israeli spy who was arrested, now BFF with Mike Huckabee, who was selling U.S. secrets. He's one of the most famous, Mossad cases of being arrested for selling U.S. secrets. And yeah, so with Pollard, there were articles that came out about 6 months ago, even in Israeli news, saying that Pollard might have even been connected to Lewinsky, and that there was the compromise was had between those two. So in other words, that's not very far fetched. It's very possible that they would know each other, given the interconnections of people like fixers like Jeffrey Epstein.
So what do you think happened then during the couple of dozen visits Jeffrey Epstein, when he went to the White House? And I know Mark Middleton played a role in this, and he was unalived like Vince Foster.
Yes. Yeah. My godfather, by the way, Dean Arnold, has a book on the taking out of Vince Foster, and he thinks in his book, he theorizes that Hillary played a role in that. And again, that would make sense given the fact that the Clinton initiative and the Clintons formed this close relationship at this time, and the Democratic Party as well, with Epstein and all of his operations. And that's why in Whitney's first several chapters, she details all of these donations to the DNC and to Hillary's campaign, et cetera, that the Epsteins gave. Now, I'm not trying to exonerate Republicans. I don't care about the two-party dialectic, but this is interesting because most of this is very much, I would say 90% Democrat individuals. And that's just probably because of the worldview of many of the Democrats. So-called liberals is probably a little easier to get them involved in the sexual type of stuff than the fake conservatives. So the fake conservatives are all a bunch of gays, so they don't really care about. They're not really to the underage people, unless it's like, there was a couple cases of GOP. So I'm just making a joke, like the GOP, they like men, right? But then a lot of these people, they like the younger types, and perhaps even worse types of SNUFF stuff. So that also, by the way, a lot of people aren't talking about this. She has several chapters that deal with the relationship between China and the Democratic Party as well. And I'm not trying to exonerate the Zionist interests, because you have to understand that a lot of those Israeli secrets that were stolen from the U.S., they were sold to China. So Israel has no problem selling U.S. tech and secrets to China. And there was an article some years back, or maybe pretty recently, actually, between about Netanyahu forming new relationships with Xi Jinping, a new Israel-China axis. So that's not antithetical to what we're talking about, because China had a really, really tight relationship through various lobbyists with the Democratic Party and the Clintons and the Clinton Initiative. Again, let's not forget Laura Silsby and the human trafficking with the Clinton Initiative, Clinton Global Foundation. I mean, that clearly ties in with Epstein 100%. Whitney details that. That's all vindicated. And by the way, remember Bannon was texting back and forth with Epstein, and Bannon said, "All roads lead to China." And Epstein replies with a winky, "You mean Tel Aviv?"
So do you think when the Clintons are on the stand, they'll be asked about Mark Middleton selling nuclear codes to Israel, selling technology to China? Or is this just like Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan, Trump versus the Clintons? It's all scripted.
I mean, I don't remember. There probably is some case, but I mean, I remember as a kid, there were Iran-Contra hearings, and I remember watching on the TV, Oliver North is sitting there in hearings. Did anybody ever get in any trouble? Like, do hearings actually do anything other than just give the impression that the government's doing their job? They're going to get the bad apples and root them out. Nothing ever happens other than it's just like PR or something. So I wouldn't expect much to happen, although this will be probably big, this will probably be Iran-Contra level news media stuff in terms of people paying attention to it. But who actually believes the Clintons are going to actually get in any trouble?
I know. If you put Fergie and Prince Andrew on the stand, I think they'd end up with life sentences. They're so low IQ. But the Clintons are such polished psychopathic liars, and they've got the legal training.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah, they I think they're immune to anything, any consequences of what's going to happen next with them. They're untouchable. So, Prince Andrew's been getting hammered a lot here in the UK, and I think a lot of other big names go missed. But when these photos come out, the country's in uproar here, and there's overtures now, even from our Prime Minister, that Andrew should go to America and answer some questions. Do you think that anything like that could happen, or would the Queen's favorite son always be insulated?
Again, I mean, I think, as you would know, in your country, with the political class and the elites, they're usually above the law. And it's the same way in the US when you get up into that, billionaire structure, or when you get up into that presidential level, or high tier lobbyist level, you're above the law. And that's another thing that's kind of demoralizing in part about the Epstein files, is so many people who would be implicated are blacked out. Why are people that are asking for children, asking for 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, why is their names being blacked out? Shouldn't they be arrested immediately? So we can go to Argentina and exfiltrate the president and arrest a socialist president in Argentina, but we can't figure out who these redacted names are and arrest these people. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Do you think a lot of this stuff, snatching Maduro, imminent war with Iran, it's orchestrated to kind of get the headlines away from the Epstein files?
Yeah, especially with a lot of the mainstream media is not even hardly touching this, other than a few clips on YouTube news outlets. All the shills are covering up for it. They're saying that it's nothing here, it's a nothing burger. That's all lies. This should be the easiest low IQ test for anybody right now. If they're not talking about it or downplaying it, they're fakes, they're shills. And anybody talking about it, for the most part, is probably sincere. So this should be a huge, easy discernment IQ test for people who can't figure out who truth tellers are in the media at this point. But yeah, it's just, again, the oligarchs have a free pass. They believe they're above the law, and you actually see that in a lot of the emails of Epstein. And he's just a middleman, right? He's not actually, there's emails where he's being told, we'll take care of you, or you have permission to assassinate. There's one email talking about, we have permission to assassinate, you can kill. All that's going on with him taking orders at the same time as being this high level, fixer, middleman, consultant, organized crime figure. So the tier above that is the tier that appears to be, untouchable.
Viewers, thank you for sharing this out. We've got over 8,000 watching. Jay's about to set a record here with the live stream figures. Please keep your questions coming. And Marie wants to know, who does Jay think are some of the 25 people that has paid to never be mentioned or questioned?
I don't know. My guess would be that it's probably high level. I think one thing that was mentioned back when a lot of people were, maybe 6-8 months ago, were focusing on Trump, and they were saying, well, Trump's, covering up, which he was covering up because, as Alex pointed out, CIA and Mossad were putting pressure on Trump to not release this, which was a huge blunder for Trump. So I think probably the class of individuals that would be paying that type of stuff, if that's the case, would be in the financial realm. And my suspicion is that, the real crux of what's going on, the transhumanism stuff is definitely something that he was interested in. Money was going into that. There was baby farm harvesting stuff, very closely parallel to the John of God stuff. If you remember the John of God cult, I think I might have even talked to you about that back at the time, years ago. But that was something Oprah promoted, which was that guy down in Brazil or Peru or whatever, who had a cult, but it was a baby farm. And now that appears to be what, Zorro Ranch was, which has been covered up, and everybody's ignoring all that. There's crazy stuff with Zorro Ranch for sure. But But yeah, so I think that beyond that weird stuff, the transhumanist stuff, the locus of this is world finance. And that's why in that interview, when he's talking to Bannon, he's like, yeah,
Well, finance is like it works. It operates like a big, like it's a creature. It's like alive or something, and it's like it's like I've been studying. Is it actually just data, or is it like it's alive or whatever?
so he's like, he sees it like a golem, right? If you understand the golem in Jewish mysticism of Kabbalah, they're looking at finance and the world of illusory finance and fiat money. And by the way, he even says to Bannon, and he has to explain to Larry Summers, the banker. Did you see that about the Vatican Bank? He's like explaining to a banker what the Vatican Bank is. And he's like, the Vatican Bank is the world's most secretive bank, perfect for money laundering. And then he even references things like the stepping down of Benedict as a result of the money laundering of the Vatican Bank, which has a long time been connected to the CIA, all the way back to William Colby, James Jesus Angleton, and Bill Donovan, who was himself a Roman Catholic, who helped to forge those alliances between the OSS and CIA and the Vatican. This is all well documented. Everything I talked about with Gladio, I think we've even talked about Gladio on here. That whole email of Epstein explaining to Larry Summers, the Clinton, Harvard finance capital vulture guy who helped loot Russia, he's explaining to Larry Summers how the Vatican Bank works. And so I get the impression, and he's even explaining to Ehud Barak, like what is happening in Silicon Valley. You would think these people know, and it's like Ehud Barak is struggling to spell Palantir. So you would think these people have, but I think Epstein knew about this stuff from living in the world of organized crime and intelligence. So he knows that there's things like the Vatican Bank, and there's things like Bank for National Settlements. And he says to Bannon, the Federal Reserve is a weapon. Inflation is a weapon. And so even Bannon is sort of learning things from Epstein. So I think that's why he understands how the world really works, is because like you and I, we study and read and know about criminal stuff. You more so than me. I don't mean in a negative way, but I'm saying like you've seen it from the inside, right? I mean, you live that stuff. But me from the books, like this is all in the books too, by the way.
All right, so we've seen this peculiar journey of Ghislaine Maxwell, including, Trump saying he wished her well when she got arrested. Then, the survivors were begging the feds to sit down and talk to them. They got snubbed, but they went and sat down with her for a couple of days. She got moved to a soft prison, and she's paving the way to get released early. So I'd just like to get your general thoughts on what's going to happen next with her, because we've got a question here as well. What will Ghislaine say when she is deposed by the House committee on February the 9th?
My guess would be that they're probably just going to be told by lawyers and, legal counsel to say, I don't remember, I don't know, deny everything. I mean, who knows? I mean, what do you think? I mean, I this is the area of this whole thing that I don't know a lot about, which is like what's been going on with Ghislaine of late. I've more so just been focused on the files and the history of Jeff himself and Robert Maxwell. But what do you think about Ghislaine? I think you would know way more about that than I do.
Well, she knows everything.
Right.
And we saw what happened to Jeffrey. We saw the exact same thing happen to Jean-Luc Brunel. And people speculate, why has it not happened to her? And I think if you go back to the roots of all this, whereby, she was indoctrinated into the Maxwell network,
right?
Jeffrey was brought into that, and Ghislaine, and they were partners in crime. I think because the apparatus is so powerful and she's protected by the apparatus, they have perhaps influenced the outcome for her. In the very beginning, I said she's going to get a huge sentence right now because it's in the headlines, but some kind of high court's appeal judge down the road, when people aren't watching as closely, will kick her out early, and it seems that's what's going to happen. I think with all of the connections, because the Black Book, all those connections came from her mostly. I think that people know she knows about them, and they've got a lot to lose. But I think she knows how to play her cards correctly. So I think she's protected, just like
Well,
Maxwell was buried in Israel with full honors. I think some of that power still comes down to the Maxwell kids, because look at what her siblings are up to. Look what they're involved in.
well, yeah, she and her sister together were involved in creating Magellan, and that's linked with Encarta, and it was used to be on the front page of Netscape Navigator back in the 1990s. And their first big deal was her sister, and her sister mainly. They sold that to the McKinley Group and made $18 million at the time, and that's how, according to Whitney Webb, they were originally introduced to Bill Gates. So they've been in the spheres of these people, you know, going back to the 70s and 80s. She used to go skiing with like that I forget that actor, but I mean, she's been in these circles, you know, since from her youth. Like, she's been sort of groomed and trained for this. And that's another interesting thing, is the grooming, as I mentioned earlier. But anyway, I don't get sidetracked. But do you think that means that she will be perhaps some sort of limited hangout where they'll put her up there and she'll say, "Oh, I don't know," and you know, this is all getting exaggerated? The line they seem to be going with from the shills and the apologists is, "Oh, it's all exaggerated. It's all rumors." And I saw Bill Gates saying the emails are all fake. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why are heads of state, UN people, why are they stepping down and resigning if they're all fake? This is so usually the policy is just deny, deny, deny.
We live streamed the interview she did when the Fed sat down with her.
Mhm.
And I think it will be a repeat of that, where she'll be kissing ass to the present administration, maybe drop some low-level fruit. But in general, you know, she's not gonna jeopardize the apparatus, and the apparatus will continue to protect her.
Sure.
And you did mention the next person then that I'd like to bring up, and that is this guy. Here we go, Bill Gates. You know, the salacious headline, of course, what was the stuff about him surreptitiously wanting to drug his wife with this STD caught from the Russian lady.
Yeah, well, that's an insight into his how, you know, malicious that guy is. And you remember too when somebody asked him about Epstein unaliving himself, and Bill Gates just said, "Well, I got to be careful. I got to be careful." Almost sort of giddy about it a little bit. Well, you know, gotta be careful about what happens. And but I think the most shocking thing that I've seen so far with our boy Gil Bates here is that there were those emails where Jeffrey was tagging him saying that oh, by the way, here's some information on running pandemic simulations in 2017, and there was also reportedly another one from 2015. So yeah. What does that tell you? That even Epstein's involved in this nonsense of coof from, you know, the nightmare that we all live through. And once again, yes, of course, it's all organized, and even to the point of Epstein being involved.
And then did you read the emails between Epstein and Branson, where Branson is putting forward Bill Gates to get up and boost Epstein PR-wise, and say he was just a horny guy, went with a 17-year-old, no big deal, and by the way, next time when we meet, can you bring your harem?
I did. And did you see the I'm not sure what to make of the shrimp and shark one. Did you see that one today?
No, can you expand on that, please?
Well, I read the whole exchange, and it's one of those ones that's kind of hard to figure out what they're talking about, where you don't, I mean, they are talking about girls, and they're talking, there's a Saudi prince or somebody's in the email chain, and they're saying, "Oh, by the way, Jeff, can't wait to, you know, come check out your island or whatever." And Jeff says, "Yeah, I got an island in the Caribbean, and I've got girls in the aquarium." And then it's like, you think, does he mean that you get in the hot tub with the girl, the pool? What's he talking about? And then it goes on to say, "Yeah, well, what you do with some of the bodies is, if you have sharks, then you know what to do." And Jeff says, "Oh, I don't have sharks." He says, "I just remove the head and keep the body in the aquarium." Now, other people are saying, "Oh, they're talking about seafood or pets." And I'm like, really? I mean, in one of the he says in one of the emails that he's talking about the girls in the aquarium. Well, he's talking about. I mean, he's talking about girl sharks. I mean, come on. They're talking about what apparently perhaps to do with leftover bodies when you're done. Is what it sounds like.
And you know, there's mention of torture and people being unalived. What credence is there to those allegations?
Oh, I think that's legit. Yeah. I mean, there's multiple. Actually, I've seen at least 3 that talk about, oh, by the way, did you torture her? Oh, by the way, torture, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, and it seems to be, again, catering to whatever person's dark proclivities are, right? Because then you've got, like, mega blackmail, right? And that's the thing that, we've already seen some photo and video imagery kind of leak out that are this blacked out, obviously with Epstein with very young people. But what have we not seen? It's probably that kind of stuff.
All right, thanks for the super chat, Rail Rider. Jay, have you heard of Ronald Bernard, Dutch banker in the 90s that is working with top-level Luciferians on the financial side? Amazing story. What's his story, Jay?
Well, he was a banker that was somewhat high up. I don't know if he was in the top tier. I think he was dealing with millions, hundreds of millions, perhaps. And this video was floating around maybe 10 years ago. And it's an interview with him where he says, I was in the highest levels of banking and I met billionaire bankers and financiers, and they were interested in unaliving young people, and many of them were into Satanism and so forth. And it went around, and he said, I had to leave that world because it was just too wicked. And some of the claims were a little unsubstantiated, but I would say now he seems a little more vindicated.
All right, J.R. Williams, can you expound on the satanic hierarchy? Why do some worship Baal as opposed to Moloch or Baphomet, or do they worship all of them and summon worship them respectively according to certain needs? Great question, JR.
I mean, I don't think there's one, dogmatic Satanism, right? I mean, Satanism is kind of tailored to the Satanist. So you've got, for example, Anton LaVey's Satanism, which is very atheistic, and it's more of what he called ritual psychodrama, where you just kind of train yourself to be like a vampire or like, Crowley or like something. It's not really trying to invoke entities. But if you read Michael Aquino, he seems to take it a little more seriously. He thinks that there are, it's called theistic Satanism. So that does exist. So I would say, just like with Kabbalism, there's as many different Kabbalahs as there are rabbis, because they can kind of tailor it and kind of create their own theories. So there's not like there's some dogma that you have to worship Baal and not, Moloch. It can be any of the above.
There's definitely a satanic curvature to his eyebrows, and I'm saying,
yeah. Well, I think he actually wanted to take on the appearance of, like Dracula. So I'm being serious.
I've got a question for the viewers. Put a 1 in the chat if you think Tony Blair's eyebrows are approaching the eyebrows of Aquino, that with the satanic curvature. Put a 1 in the chat if you think that's the case. Put a 2 in the chat if you do not think that is the case. Because Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Mandelson, the stuff that's been coming out. All right, so thank you for the super chat. Fly away forever. Jay, do you know about Dershowitz and Kushner being Mossad?
Well, I did see the FBI CHS division report on that, and I think a lot of people had suspicions of that possibility for many years, but there does appear to be that one document where they're saying that one of the people in the FBI was giving a report saying they thought that.
All right, and the chat's just gone over 10,000 live across all platforms. This is
what's your record, Sean?
So record in recent years was with Jaguar Wright. I think we had 13 to 15K.
Oh, okay.
Back in the Epstein days, 55K.
Oh,
when I was up to some naughty things that got me terminated. JR, again, can you give us some context on the satanic hierarchy of demonic entities? And do Satanists generally choose to worship, or is that dependent on the need?
Yeah, I think it just really depends on what type of Satanism or tradition a person is getting into. So, if you get into Crowley's domain of it, he tailored his own religion. That was his own, account that he channeled this from a being called Iwas, which he thought was an Egyptian deity. And so Thelema is based around Crowley's private revelations and his schema of how you invoke and do this with entities. But again, other strands or traditions of Satanism are going to be doing different types of worship or whatever. So again, there's not just one sort of version of it. It's all kind of a hodgepodge, and you could, any Satanist can make up his own thing. And to prove that, you can actually look at Aquino's writings himself. I've actually read several of Michael Aquino's books. I think it's the book called Black Magic that he wrote, which is part of the Pentagon analysis. Because people don't know he wrote the Army's Psy-War doctrine back in the 90s or so, together with Paul Vallée, who, by the way, I think is part of the TPUSA. But so in that Black Magic text, he says the beginning, and I'm going from memory, I read this like 10 years ago, but he says something like, every Satanist is basically trying to become the magus who imposes his will on the world at that time, and the real goal is to become the Aeos, the magician or the magus of that aeon. And he says, I'm going to speak the word to this aeon, and I'm going to put to shame Crowley and the huckster, Anton LaVey. And he says, my word of this aeon is this, right? So in other words, they're all trying to kind of compete to be their own cult leaders. And Crowley's thing, for example, is a graduate school in creating a cult. That's why people who graduate from it, like L. Ron Hubbard or Gerald Gardner, they create their own cults. So I think that's really what's going on when you want to try to understand the hierarchy of these entities.
Yeah, I'm just getting a Crowley picture up there as well. Let's have a look.
And let's not forget, Crowley was a British and MI5 asset.
Yeah, they're always tied into intelligence some way or other. Super chat third, Temple of Dagon. I've not heard of that. Have you heard of that?
Well, Dagon is in the Old Testament the fish deity that the Philistines worshipped. So, Dagon makes multiple appearances in the Bible in the Old Testament. But I don't know what that means. That Baal's father is beneath Gaza. I don't know what that means.
What's your opinion on Manly Hall in Hollywood?
Well, I mean, the Manly P. Hall Library is out in LA, and I'm sure many people have visited it. I've read a couple Manly P. Hall books. He has an occult view of America, but what's most interesting about him is that I remember many years ago, I listened to his whole lectures on YouTube. They used to be up. I don't know if they're still up, but at the end of these lectures, he says, by the way, what's the meaning of all this occult stuff? It's United Nations socialism. He says that's the only hope, is to create a United Nations based socialist one world government. So I think that was Manly P. Hall telling you what he was all about.
Who are the Amalek?
All right, so in the Old Testament, Amalek is a king who attacks Israel when they're leaving Egypt, and he kills the women and the children who are in the sort of towards the rear. And from that point on, the Israelites referred to any of their enemies, be they Egyptians, be they Greeks, whoever, they would call anybody Amalek. So when you saw Netanyahu, for example, saying that Gaza needed to be cleansed because they're Amalek, that's a term that they'll use for anybody who's an opponent of Israel.
Thoughts on the Fabian Society?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've covered extensively, many books up here dealing with that. And I think they dominate UK politics, especially Keir Starmer's a Fabian socialist. Go back to, I think, but Blair was a member of the socialists, Fabian socialists. I mean, they're just an elite clique all the way back to H.G. Wells, Bertrand Russell. They were spawned by Lord Milner and Lord Rothschild. So that's why socialism and Marxism are promoted everywhere.
All right, thank you for the super chat, Blake. Jay, did you see the one document which described the Eastern Orthodox Church as the last wall of defense against Western degeneracy and modernism? Given this enormous audience, your best elevator pitch for orthodoxy, we know the real battle.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, really, when it comes to Christianity, given the obvious compromise of the Vatican, the covering up of the PDF crisis, the massive amount of scandals, Vatican Bank, the references that we have now to Epstein and John Paul II, the Vatican, more than one or two, I would say, for Christianity, that's really the only authentic thing left. I mean, it's not to say that there aren't bad Orthodox people. There are. In fact, one of the high level Greek billionaires was a member of the was in the Black Book. So you can have compromise and wicked people anywhere, but I mean, I think that's authentic Christianity right there. And it's not like Protestantism. It's not like the papacy. It's different.
What's your thoughts on this portrait I'm going to put on the screen?
Nothing would surprise me, you know, if it turned out, look, sometimes I like to just slip into a little bit of nice ladies' evening wear. There's nothing weird about it. I like to put on some nice high heels, and how dare you? I mean, I think it shows obviously that they were close for all those years. That's not really disputed. And it could point to proclivities that Bill has that we don't know. Who knows? But I think probably also Epstein seems to have a kind of a goofy sense of humor too. Like he says kind of ridiculous things and jokes around quite a bit. So probably that's some kind of just joke that they have.
So we had Craig Lund on, and he was talking about the difference between Luciferians and Satanists. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but what are the difference between Luciferians and Satanists?
Well, I mean, historically, Satanism has meant kind of groups that would be against, say, the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages or something like that. And they would create a black mass where they're sort of doing something to defile and gaining power through that. That's kind of the classic idea of what Satanism is. As we know, the Church of Satan with Anton LaVey was more of an atheistic, you know, Hollywood type of thing. Not very serious, but, you know, more like skepticism or something that you would get out of Dawkins and people like that kind of make fun of religion. But I think there are other groups that take it more seriously, like you know, Luciferianism is the idea. A lot of transhumanists are Luciferian. They think that Lucifer represents a fallen figure, mythological or real, that represents a way to defy God and become gods. So it's usually associated with what's called apotheosis, the idea that man can become or be God in place of God. Kabbalism would tie into that very well. So I think that's the difference, is that Luciferians probably see themselves as more associated with, you know, Gnosticism and transcending human limitations and death, and not necessarily, I mean, they could invoke a deity or an entity, but they may not. Remember that there's a famous picture of Lord Rothschild with Marina Abramovic underneath. I think it's Lucifer.
All right. So next question is from Cassidy. Is this all linked to Sabbatean Frankism? Could you define that for us first?
Yeah, Jacob Frank was a Jewish sectarian who claimed, if I recall, to be the Messiah, but he also had this view that you had to do evil actions to kind of balance out the good and the evil. And so evil was part of the world process. And I would say, yeah, there is an influence there. But I don't, a lot of times people say, oh, it's not Rabbinic Judaism, it's not the Talmud, it's this, you know, Sabbatean Frankist stuff. Well, no, it's actually the Talmud itself that says that Jesus is boiling in excrement. And, you know, it's like the Talmud itself has all kinds of like blasphemous stuff on its own. It doesn't need to just be the Sabbatean Frankists, although they were a satanic group within Judaism.
Now that we have Palantir, the seeing stone, what should we fear to use it? Isn't Palantir like the Promise software on steroids?
Well, I remember I've got Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1, and there's a chapter where he talks about selling Palantir tech to the NSA, and he says that basically it's able to sort of collate data and try to like figure out, okay, this was some years ago, so it may be more advanced than that now, but it was like, oh, we noticed that there was this sales of stuff here, and we noticed that this terror person happened to be in the Middle East that day, and he took a cab here. And so then they sort of take all that data and say it was Ramzi Youssef when he flew to London and he did the terror, you know, whatever. So that's the way he describes it in that book. So it seems to be some sort of a mass metadata collating thing, but I'm not really sure exactly how it all works.
So with Palantir then, you know, with the Promise software, I believe they crunched the data and they were able to like locate people.
Yeah.
But I think Whitney Weber's been talking about Palantir now, predicting things like predicting people committing crimes, so you can make arrests of people who've not even. Isn't that the Orwellian thought? Please,
I put that in my second book. In fact, I did chapters on Minority Report, because remember Spielberg did Philip K. Dick's Minority Report, and that's the whole premise of the movie, is that future psychic tech can predict, right, when crimes are going to happen, and then you can kind of supposedly stop the crime. And that's reportedly, like Whitney's saying, what, total information awareness all the way back to right after 9/11, and then DARPA all the way up to Palantir is supposed to be able to do that. But they were saying that in the UK, they were already installing that equipment 10 years ago, because I wrote articles on that in the UK 10 years, about what was happening in the UK. For actually a UK outlet, take that back, 21st Century Wire. I remember writing an article about Minority Report technology being used in the UK back then to predict crime. So I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Jay, we're at the hour. Do you have time to answer a few more questions?
Sure.
All right. So Brightmore, isn't Kabbalism the common thread?
A common thread with what? I don't think that all the world leaders are necessarily into Kabbalism. You have with a lot of the world leaders, seeming ignorance about things you would be surprised. Like, I was surprised Ehud Barak didn't know about, Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley stuff. That was surprising. Sometimes Epstein is explaining to bankers basic things you would think they would know. So I don't think that a lot of these people are even Epstein himself at times seems to be ignorant of kind of surprising things. So I doubt that people are taking as mystic stuff that seriously, although Epstein seems to. Maybe it's hard to say, but if the connecting thread is just power and compromise. That's the connecting thread here.
So what do you think about Virginia's allegation against Ehud Barak that he was essaying her and R-wording her, but also choking her almost to death? That's what aroused him the most. And when she went and told Jeffrey about this, he said, it's part of your job description, get on with it. And I think it was Lady C over here. She said she'd had information from overseas, various countries, that because Ehud Barak was going to be referenced in the book, thusly, and called the prime minister, Virginia was unalived in a way to make it look as if she'd done it herself. Do you think there's any credence to that theory?
Nothing would surprise me. And I'm not trying to knock the victim's testimonies. It's just that, a lot of the really kind of salacious, in my view, distraction, disinformation stuff, not with her necessarily, but with, for example, the first day everybody was sharing that crazy guy's report that, I was cut on my feet with a cimeter, but there's no scars because they cut me with a special cimeter, and George Bush was humping me in the butt. And to me, that's just some crazy guy's tip. And we do have to take into account that this has been ongoing up until recently, that anyone can call in these tips. So the files include all kinds of just crazy stuff. So there are some outlandish things. And in my view, the really kind of crazy stuff, it could be true. It's just, we don't know. It's hard to verify that from a reader's perspective. The most damning stuff is what's in the emails. The emails themselves and the text messages are so damning that, like, that's where the real verifiable, meat is Epstein saying, yeah, let's torture, let's kill, let's do this. That's the crux of what's happening here. When it comes to Virginia herself, obviously there's a lot of things that don't add up. I'm not saying that she's not telling the truth, but as you know, Sean, I've been hearing MK Ultra, abuse victim people's testimonies. I've been in this domain for 25 years, and a lot of times these people will just sort of reference and say things that are just kind of outlandish and not verifiable, and their stories get really wild. They'll start talking about aliens. I'm not saying Virginia Jeffrey did that. I'm just saying it's just very difficult to parse out amongst survivors' stories things that are verifiable. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to discredit the survivors. There are many of them. I don't doubt them at all in terms of overall that this was going on. It's just that sometimes the survivors' stories end up being some of the most damaging things to shoot themselves in the foot. For example, Fiona Barnett, not saying she wasn't abused, but like eventually the story is get really outlandish. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, anyone can call the FBI and
Right.
make any allegation, but when you've got people emailing each other,
You're right. Exactly.
it gives an insight into who they really are, which brings me to this guy, Elon, and he said he's never been to the island. It's all nonsense, blah blah blah. But I think that the intent was there in this email from Elon to Jeffrey. Jeffrey's been convicted. He's this high profile, monster. Yeah, Elon is drooling all over him. I want to come there and party when it's the craziest night. I don't want to kick back and relax. I want to go wild. And Elon's tried to rebut this. What do you think?
Well, that was. I mean, I don't mean to make light of a very macabre situation, not macabre, by the way, macabre situation, because it's macabre because or it's funny because the original email that first popped up, like the first or second day, was Epstein inviting Elon and saying, "We've got young, pretty UN diplomats there," and Elon says, "Why would I care about meeting young UN diplomats?" So Elon's Asperger's kicked in, didn't realize that, that this was a coded reference to girls. So I thought that was actually pretty funny. But then it does appear that there's another email where he says, "Hey, what about those parties?" And then they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna shut those down." So it's almost like they didn't want him there. So did you see that where they were like, they replied, they're like, "Yeah, we may not do the island anymore."
No,
he's too nerdy to, like, they didn't want him there. They changed their mind. At first they were like trying to get him. He didn't. And Epstein says something like, "Are you retarded? I'm talking about girls." And then he later messages them and they're like, Ghislaine says something back like, "Yeah, we're probably not going to do the island anymore." So they didn't want him.
So we've got Antiquity thoughts on Epstein funding Catholic charities youth programs in the Virgin Islands. And that's one of the biggest PDF file rings in the world right there, isn't it? The Catholic Church.
Yeah, we've seen really kind of ridiculous profiles on Twitter trying to run cover for all of this and say, "Oh, actually, Pope Francis exposed all this." When you read the actual FBI report, it says nothing about that. All it says is that there was one guy who was a FBI informant who claimed to have had multiple passports and worked in the tech field and was a hacker. It doesn't say anything about Francis exposing anything. In fact, Francis had flights arranged for him by Epstein. So we know that there was apparently a meeting between Francis and Epstein. We know that Epstein had confirmed with John Paul back in 2003. Then we have a 2015 email referring back to that time and saying that he spent a significant time living there, allegedly in this email. And we know that Epstein had an insight into how the Vatican Bank worked. And then there was a series of emails too that referenced the Vatican. So in fact, Epstein said that John Paul had gifted him some object or piece of architecture. So there's actually multiple references that suggest a much closer relationship. And as you know, Sean, that's not surprising, not just with the PDF stuff, but the papacy. John Paul II gave a papal knighthood to Jimmy Savile, the infamous necro, and PDF trafficker and procurer. Why would the Vatican give a papal knighthood to this person? Is that any more surprising than spending time with Epstein? So it's not at all surprising to me that it is on record that Catholic Charities received a significant amount of donation from Epstein, and that that's very close to Little St. James. So the island that we're talking about here, the Virgin Islands, that's very close to Little St. James. Not surprising.
Yeah, and for a deeper dive on Savile, I've got a 4-hour documentary people can watch on YouTube called Untouchable. And I've also written a book, Untouchable, Jimmy Savile, if you want to do an even deeper dive. It's worldwide on Amazon. Are you familiar with the Yellowstone Club?
Are you referring to the national park and some sort of like scandal there at Yellowstone?
I don't know. That was a viewer question, but I'll move on. Why wouldn't George Bush be in the files? Did he know to stay away? I mean, David Icke's been retweeting this allegation that Bush and Clinton were present when females were gang R-worded.
Well, that's the one that sounds crazy. And if you read the report, the guys, whoever's writing down, the FBI or whoever's taking that tip, he says the guy has no cuts on his feet. and then it's like because they cut him in a way where there wouldn't be scars. It's like I don't think that one's credible. And the other thing too is like he says he was taken to the FBI by Michael Moore, and Michael Moore is not a credible person. So
yeah, they cut his feet with the scimitar.
yeah, and there's no scars because it's a special one that doesn't leave scars. So that sounds like schizo stuff.
We have got David Icke confirmed interview next week, folks. I know many people have been asking about that. All right, so Conanigan, does Freemasonry control our state judiciary?
I don't know if you mean the UK or in the US, but I mean, Freemasonry is still there. It still has a degree of power and influence. I would say that there's probably a good degree of, Freemasonic control, especially in the UK. I mean, the UK is a lot more of a headquarters, with the Grand Lodge, and, especially the UK police have been, for a long time, very closely aligned with Freemasonic groups and networks. So, and that does exist in the US, perhaps not as much as the UK, but I mean, we have people get invited still to the big Grand Temple Lodge in Washington, D.C. That's where you get your 33rd degree. That's only by invitation. So I would say that it plays a role, sure.
Yeah, much to the consternation of the UK Freemasons, the London Met Police recently announced that if you're applying for a job with them now, you have to declare if you're a Freemason.
Interesting. Well, I know that they've been that the police and the Masons have been interlinked, as has like Scotland Yard and Interpol and all that for a long time.
Totally infiltrated.
Yeah.
What are the odds incriminating digital evidence has been scrubbed? Quite high, I would say.
Yeah, well, people are already calling attention to the fact that it seems like the number of the released files every day seems to be getting lower. So probably a lot.
Yeah, and do you think the other 3 million files will ever see the light of day?
I don't know. I mean, hopefully I heard somebody alleging that it's already been archived on other websites and other places. So I hope so.
Who do you think will be unalived next in this psycho nightmare?
Well, I mean, I guess I would have thought Ghislaine would be a good contender, but who knows? I mean, it could be any of these. I don't know. What do you think? Do they need to unalive anybody because all this is out there? I mean, what about maybe Andrew?
I think that this guy could end up like Princess Diana. He's become such an embarrassment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much at stake.
Yeah.
With the royal families like teetering.
Yeah, that could be a good contender there.
So will El Capo do something about that? We will see. Anything to say on Ellen DeGeneres?
I don't know much about that angle of it. What's the? I mean, I haven't seen the only Hollywood people I've seen come up are George Clooney, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jane Fonda. I'm probably forgetting others. Some Brett Ratner, directors. But what's the Ellen angle that I'm not aware of?
I'm not sure, but didn't DiCaprio get money from Epstein or something?
Could be. I saw, oddly enough, it was the email. You probably saw this one from Epstein to Mandelson saying, "Hey, Leo wants to know if you can hook up some product deals in European or foreign countries." So that's the only one I saw. But there might be. I'm sure there's other ones.
Thanks for the super chat, Marilyn. How do we free ourselves from this apparent darkness, or at least live free of the influence? Is it possible to untangle from it? It's difficult, isn't it? Because all the mainstream media is owned, and they're an MK Ultra and everybody 24/7.
Well, I think you can always choose what you watch and put your attention into media wise. So in my case, I kind of feel like I've been freed from it for a long time because I'm trying to brag, but I learned a lot of this 20, 25 years ago. So I wasn't really, I feel like I've kind of been free from it, but at the same time, I know, when it's like your top politicians and media people, you feel like you can't escape it. But, maybe now that people are wising up to it, we'll begin to see people no longer believing and trusting the establishment. I think that's the biggest positive sign of all this, is that many, many people are waking up to realize that, the establishment, all they do is lie, and they're 10 times more corrupt than the criminals that you hear about on the news.
Was Stan Lee influenced by the occult?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think comic books have always had a degree of esoteric and occult influence, and they've also been vehicles of a lot of propaganda, but I don't actually know about Stan Lee himself very much.
Any proof Savile and Epstein knew each other?
Oh, good question. Don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. Have you seen anything?
I've not seen definitive proof of that, Willie, but the networks, you know, you got the what was it? The Bank of Credit and Commerce International, Khashoggi, Savile, that was Savile's era, and Epstein was just up and coming.
Yep.
So the networks definitely overlapped.
And the Vatican is another overlap there too.
Aren't the satanic symbols prevalent yet hidden in plain sight to cast esoteric spells?
I think some people who are in that power structure believe that. I don't know if everybody does, but I mean, I don't think, but I mean, it's like, you know, Blavatsky wrote ISIS Unveiled, and she said, you know, 100 years ago, kind of working as the frontispiece of that Rothschild control structure, as to, she was sort of the creator of a new religion of the New Age itself. And by the way, Crowley actually credited her for a big part of, you know, changing the consciousness of the West to adopt these kind of more satanic principles. She said that we don't have to be hidden anymore. It can all be unveiled. We're no longer persecuted, so all the satanic stuff can come out, she says.
We've got a guy called Tim Cohen on, who's written a book about King Charles being the Antichrist. Do you have any thoughts on that theory?
I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think he's, you know, unfortunately an evil, compromised person, but I don't think he's the Antichrist.
Do you think he's a reptilian?
No, I don't believe in the reptile. I think people can be demonically possessed, but I don't believe in the reptile theory. No.
Are we really seeing a release, or being passivized and fed a few breadcrumbs?
I mean, you can go read the information. I've spent, you know, 5 days straight in the information. This is not breadcrumbs. This is pretty damaging stuff, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's great, and I'm hoping that even more is going to come out.
Yeah,
hope
so. Yeah.
I think you've answered most of the questions, Jay, and I know you've been doing a lot, so I'm going to let you go at this point. I've got all of these crazy bullet points that Nick Bryant has sent me. Nick Bryant's talked about some of the darkest stuff in the files, and I'm going to go over some of those. But is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers, my friend?
Hey, thanks for having me. Always have good conversation with you. You know, Sean and I have done interviews as well on my channel. People can go check that out in the past. And then I did just put out my third book, Esoteric Hollywood 3. So this one kind of gets on a lot of the movies and the occult stuff that I didn't get to in 1 and 2. So if you go to jaysanalysis.com and get in the shop, everybody gets a signed copy, and you can get a hold of Esoteric Hollywood 1, 2, and 3. So I've written 1,000 pages on Hollywood cults, symbology, and intelligence agencies.
Jay is absolutely prolific, folks. I am going to put his links again in the live chat. And if you're watching on replay, please just go in the description box and follow his important work. All right, man. Don't be working too hard in the next few days. Get some rest, brother.
All right. Thanks, Sean.
Huge thank you for coming on. Cheers.
Absolutely. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, folks. So I've been speaking to Nick Bryant, and I'm going to try and get him on at the weekend. He sent me all these crazy things that he's found in the files. And I'll go over them. I'll go over the headlines first, and then we'll look at them in more detail. So we've got black market babies, Epstein describing his aquarium of girls. Some are like shrimp. You throw away the head and keep the body. I think Jay just talked about that. 14 and 15-year-old girls. Epstein and Maxwell unaliving 2 kids. He sent me a link, torture video. Hunting humans, loading the muffin ingredients on the plane on Friday. Epstein had the full CV of Elizabeth F. Loftus in his files. Epstein email about dinner among Musk, Thiel, and Zuckerberg. Rothschild supporting Hitler, Epstein seemingly being invited to Mar-a-Lago, genetic editing of babies, Rothschild's paying Epstein 25 million, another one on genetic editing, FBI 302 stating that Epstein introduced Melania to Trump, FBI document about Epstein blackmailing for Israeli intelligence, an FBI document mentioning a victim who never went to high school because she made so much money in middle school going to Jeffrey Epstein's, cloning and perhaps mind control. It's going to take him hours to go over all of this. Peggy Siegel, who's sick about Woody Allen being busted for incest. Billionaire Leon Black, an Epstein buddy, being vicious to victims. And it's beyond me that, Leon Black's floating around out there after giving Jeffrey hundreds of millions for financial advice, when we've seen from the Bannon interview that Jeffrey Epstein's knowledge of finance, he's just reciting like what high schoolers are taught. And they're flexing again. Bannon and Jeffrey are flexing, quoting ancient philosophy as if their IQ levels are off the scale. So for Black to say that he brought this guy in to give him financial advice, hundreds of millions, no, I'm not buying that for 1 second. I believe when the apparatus wants money moved around, they call on people like Black, they call on people like Wexner, and Epstein's just a pawn on the chessboard for the apparatus. Black and Wexner are more like knights and bishops. All right, next one. Leonardo DiCaprio apparently needed money in 2009, and he goes to Jeffrey, who then contacts Peter Mandelson for non-US sponsors for the megastar, Maxwell and Young Girl in Mexico. Perhaps Epstein requesting a hit because a Russian model is blackmailing a group of powerful businessmen. The person who posted this link said that Epstein is emailing an FSB agent, but that hasn't been confirmed. Famous biologist Bob Triver's email to Epstein discussing his trans experiments. Deepak Chopra possibly asking Epstein to arrange younger women for him. FBI report on a viral video of Epstein torturing a young girl. Though this is certainly within the realm of possibility for Epstein, it's difficult to believe that he would allow such a video to be posted to the net with his face showing. Multiple emails showing Epstein and his staff repeatedly coordinating direct contact with Naomi Campbell over several years, indicating an ongoing and active line of communication rather than a one-off interaction. Epstein setting up a meeting between future Biden CIA Director Bill Burns and Peter Thiel in 2014. Burns met with Epstein at least 3 times before becoming CIA Director. Tunnels on the Little St. James. Wow. My head's going to explode, folks. Document from Southern District of New York discussed Ghislaine Maxwell turning girl into a sex slave who was unalived by Prince Andrew, ex-prince. A very strange email from Epstein discussing babies and cream cheese. Email from Epstein to Eva Dubin discussing the self-unalivement of RFK's wife. A rather unsavory email between Oliver Collum, a high-ranking UN official, to Epstein. I like shrimp, but not so much if it's pink, although I'm definitely more into white than into any other color. I can't even think of the smell of black shrimp. Ugh. Repeated references to steaks, which are rather ominous in the context of Epstein and his cronies. Founder of orphanage Susan Hamblin saying she's sending fresh muffins to the island and asking if Epstein would like additional streaks. What? Email from Epstein unknown person saying that Robert Maxwell was trying to blackmail the Mossad and alluding to Maxwell's unalivement. And, the book the assassination of Robert Maxwell. It gives all of this in phenomenal detail and parallels what Jay Dyer said about Maxwell leaning on the Mossad to bail him out of his financial difficulties. He'd already looted the pension, etc. An email to the FBI in 2022 discussing Epstein's transportation of kids, despite the denials of Patel and Bongino. The shrimp quote, you throw away the head and keep the body, the aquarium of girls, 14 and 15-year-olds, Epstein and Maxwell unaliving 2 kids, hunting humans, loading the muffin ingredients on the plane on Friday, Epstein's false CV of Elizabeth B. Loftus in his files, false memory syndrome, and let's see, Melania. All right, I think these are starting to repeat. Epstein requesting a hit, Russian model blackmailing a group of powerful businessmen. Famous biologist Bob Trivers email to Epstein discussing, oh yeah, we've done that one. All right, so we're going to try and get Nick Bryant on at the weekend, folks. You know, out of all of those ones I've just mentioned, there's links for every single one of them. And it'd probably take me hours to do all of them. It's almost midnight here in the UK. Are there any of those I've just quoted that in particular you would like me to click on the link and go more into the information that Nick Bryant has sent over to me? Because it's just crazy, you know. All of the mainstream media, of course, focused on Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Prince Andrew, etc. But the really dark stuff, like in the links that were just sent to me by Nick Bryant, that, you know, they shine away from all this transhumanism. Oh, thank you, Jenny, for the super chat. Not in the files, but Trump pardoned Ross Albrecht, founder of Silk Road and the darknet, where you can buy stuff and hitmen using Bitcoin. Yeah, I think Trump's took a lot of money from crypto people, and I know the crypto's taken a hit recently, but I think that the Trump admin are going to try and support it however they can. Someone's put in they want me to click on the cloning link and get deeper into that. The tunnels, yeah, the secret tunnels link. What's this Keir Starmer has? I don't believe he has. Although I think it, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if he does. Sean, check out Ronald Bernard's story. Yeah, I would be interested in that. All right, so far the cloning and the tunnels. Yeah, I'm going to be interviewing David Icke, false memory syndrome. I'm going to be interviewing David Icke next week. Confirmed, to get his reaction to the files. All right, let me see. There's so many here in this list. Black market babies, torture video, hunting humans, cloning in the tunnels. Let me scroll down to that. Genetic editing, cloning. Here we go. All right, let me see if I can even put this stuff on the screen or if it's too crazy. All right, so this was a post from @BYZ General. He's posted all of the paperwork up to back this up. It's got 2.5 million views in the last couple of days. And the headline of the post is, Epstein talked about creating people with supernatural abilities by traumatizing them, which ties into a lot of the stuff we've been saying on this channel about, you know, the Adreno Kool-Aid, etc. Oh my goodness. I've just got it from Sky News here. Starmer forced into climb down over release of Mandelson files. So Keir Starmer has been forced to give government documents relating to Lord Mandelson's appointment to Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee. Woo! After resigning from Labour Party, Mandelson's... Yeah, it's kicking off with Starmer and Mandelson right now, so something's going on there. I'll try and update that as it's coming in, but let me go over what we're talking about here. Let's see. save image. Got to make this big and read it properly. It's all in the legal size, the document. All right, so this is to Jeffrey, written by someone I'm mentoring, is the title, 17th of January 2018. And it's from Gino U. U. So I just shared with you a message that I got from someone that I am mentoring based upon the stages model. A message popped up as I was about to write to you to see if you were around. Are new people here I should meet? And I shared it with you. The caravan trip has been really wonderful in meeting people that are stage 3. These are people who are developing a different perspective of reality and discovering the grifts that they have. Also in rallying others who have a strong interest in this area. Among the new projects emerging include a base to use science-based approach and Eastern practices to help sort these stage 3 people out. I understand that you are not happy with the results of the Cuba conference that you funded, but I feel that the work is very important toward helping people identify and recognize the gifts that they have, which may not be accepted or well understood by society today. That is why your support is important to me and why I am communicating to you my work and why I am grateful for the path that your commitment of funds has given me the confidence to undertake. My intention for sending you the mail is to show that it is relevant work and that people are benefiting. People that would not normally otherwise fit in are learning to accept themselves and that abilities beyond what society would consider normal are possible. New models are also possible, such as the alternative paradigms group are finding their way. New forms of knowing without knowing how one knows. Gino. So I'm about 6 or 7 chapters into the David Icke audiobook. And like I said, you know, we got Icke coming on next week. And, you know, he's talking about the intrinsic knowledge that we have, the psychic ability, the telepathy, etc. So it seems this is the kind of stuff Epstein's interested in as well. All right, so next communication is what prompted your Asperger email? And then Gino wrote, I'm in Paris and I was about to write you and it popped up. She is a classic stage 3 in the model outlier who is intelligent and traumatized when she was young. SA. Total MK Ultra script right here, isn't it? Traumatize them, manipulate, brainwash, condition. All right, I'm going to continue the email. And now gradually coming into her own and becoming self-realized, can share our text interactions with her permission, starting to develop special abilities. This trip, we found a lot of stories like this, though she is more on the extreme side, given her biographical history. Have been working with many such people with the model with good success. Incidentally, she is based in New York City. Can set up a meeting if you have interest. In London, I met with a group that leverages IBOGA and spiritual traditions from Gabon to offer this. And then the last line just says alternative paradigms. So that's the first page of the this post about creating people with supernatural abilities by traumatizing them, and also human cloned designer babies. So let me go over to the second page now. And I mean, I think this is definitive proof that Epstein was studying upon MK Ultra mind control techniques. and it wouldn't be surprised me if he was involved in the implementation of them as well, working with the intelligence agencies. All right, so the next one is designer babies. So this is from Epstein to Brian Bishop, and the title of the email is Designer Babies, Use of Funds. So this is Sunday, August the 5th, 2018. Attached is the doc you requested. It's the use of funds spreadsheet for the designer baby and human cloning company. And, you know, people laughed at Juliet Bryant, God bless her, and some of the other survivors we've had on who've talked about Epstein, you know, trying to get them pregnant and sign over babies and stuff like that. Juliet Bryant saying she woke up in New Mexico and she thinks they've done stuff to her. She thinks she was on drugs and, you know, they were trying to do stuff with her womb. And some people said it was incredulous and it's too far-fetched. Well, Epstein's discussing it all right here, folks. You know, God bless Juliet Bryant for having the bravery to come out with all this and these people saying she was full of it and now being vindicated. All right, so here's the next thing that it says. Attached is the doc you requested. It's the use of funds spreadsheet for the designer baby and human cloning company. Confirmed. This gets us out of our self-funded garbage biology phase to the first live birth of a human designer baby and possibly a human clone within 5 years. Once we reach the first birth, everything changes and the world will never be the same again, much less the future of the human species. Wow. They're going to alter the future of the human species. Attached doc shows $1.7 million a year for up to 5 years plus $1 million for lab setup, $9.5 million to fund 5 years, $6 million for 3 years. Can't believe they were going with this, folks. Next steps. I am happy to hop on another call, or I could take a trip to meet you in person. And if you have any thoughts about what I might be missing, or whether this is a reasonable estimate to get to the first live birth, oh my God, then I would really appreciate any feedback you have. I'm traveling in Lithuania for August 7-14, and I'll probably be unreachable during that time. Google Docs here saying file, and then the rest of it is redacted. And I need to reach out to Juliet Bryant now, and we can salute her bravery and get her to get into more detail about what I'm reading here. So yeah, I'm reading these things word for word. I'm a bit worried about putting emails on the screen because of YouTube's policies about doxing, and I know things are redacted, but some emails are clear. So that's why I am just, I don't know the name of the lab. That's why I'm just reading them out myself. So that's one of the links I've just clicked on from this Nick Bryant email. Let me go over to another one. So that was the cloning and mind control. Let me go over to famous biologists. I know you guys suggested some others. Oh yeah, tunnels under Little St. James. That's the next subject we'll go to. I don't know if you guys saw the live stream I did yesterday about myself being in the Epstein files, because we went on Maxwell's door and filmed the property and filmed the white banister. But that's one to check out. We're going to release the full video soon. And my dad asked me why, as the media in the UK and the US not had me on for being in the Epstein files, and I said they're all completely controlled. by about 5 or 6 different companies. It's the establishment. You know, why the hell would they get me on? They're trying to protect all this stuff. All right, so the tunnels. This is a tweet from @AutistDivision. This one's got 120,000 views in a few days. Remember when they told you there were no tunnels under Epstein estate on Little St. James Island? Well, according to these email correspondences from Epstein, turns out there were tunnels under the estate. And nuns were right once again. DOG even left us a proof by not redacting the key piece of correspondence address. And then there's some email stuff here. Let me just get this made a little bit bigger and I'll read it. All right, nice picture of the structure there as well on the island, the blue and white stripes. All right, so this is to B. Gordon from Epstein. Danny worked this morning at main compound, cell tower, coffee bench light, master light, terrace light. Peter steps first. Bryce, can you sketch out on a plan where you want the vehicles in the sheds and tunnels? And tunnels along with storage. Oh my God. It's all right here, folks. Next email to Jeffrey from Gary Kearney. Jeffrey, of the billing today, 5,000 is for the ATV garage. I would not hold up payment of 105,000. Searching whether Gensler had direction from the team. No way. From the team that added tunnels and office below the main house. Oh my God. All documented, folks. People think we're crazy talking about these things. And here we go. The DOJ has confirmed our suspicions. Email continues, I recommended we go forward payment and the contract will help overcome the apprehension I sense on Gensler being comfortable with proceeding or communicate with me, as well as aiding in my negotiating the fees for the main changes to the structure when we do meet. Right. That's another one of the Bryant links that we have covered. Let me just go back to the chat and see how all y'all are feeling. And I'm gonna. Oh, is the Queen still alive? I'm not sure. I'll have to Google that. Let's see. Donnie is the best handicap at Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago list is the next step for Great Awakening. That's from American Citizen X. Thank you for the super chat there. Yeah, Ronald Bernard story. Not in the files, but Trump pardoned. Yep, we did that one, didn't we? The crypto guy. Trey, X-Man eating hot dog, Stanley first appearance. Oh, thank you for that super chat as well. Do I think Ted Gunderson's work is credible? Absolutely. I was studying Ted Gunderson's work over a decade ago. And yeah, he exposed a lot. All right, so that's the tunnels ones. That's 2 of the links, and there's about 30, 40 of them. So should we go to Epstein discussing babies and cream cheese next? Let's see what he says on this one. This is from Parody Jeff. They are mentioning babies and cannibalism here. Wow. All right, so I'm gonna read this one to you guys. This is from Jeffrey. Cream cheese baby. There are millions of babies, very little good vegetable cream cheese. And Redacted wrote back, lol, I don't know if cream cheese and baby are on the same level. It's okay. There is still enough time today. I'm trying to schedule priming for 5:30, fuel explosion 9:45 p.m. We'll bring a new engine startup video sent by BlackBerry AT&T, and this has got almost 750,000 views in the last couple of days. All right, so that was an easy short one for us to cover. What do you guys think of that, folks? What is your interpretation of that? Let's see what it's saying in the chat. That's code clearly. Yep. Ted Gunderson, FBI whistleblower. Absolutely. Cream cheese equals 33. He calls babies cheese. Yeah. I was wondering where everybody was 20 years. Alex Jones told us about it. Yeah, totally. And it was Alex Jones who turned me on to Ted Gunderson and Freeway, Ricky Ross, and my book, Clinton Bush CIA Conspiracies, was inspired by a lot of the stuff that came from AJ back then. The streets of Philadelphia, it certainly is not a laughing matter. It's obscene, but I think sometimes we have to have some dark humor to enable us to cope with this stuff. All right, I'm going to keep scrolling. The Brian bullet points. Nick Bryant sent me some of the darkest references in the files that I'm learning this as I read it to you guys. Shall we go? Repeated references to stakes, which are rather ominous in the context of Epstein. Next. Oh my goodness. This has been tweeted by Gray Thorne, Thorne 81, full credit, and it gives data set numbers. I won't go over them. It's too they're too long and type too much time. But let's just say data set 10 is the first one. If someone gonna go instead me, I can hand off the stakes. On Thursday, March 26, 2015, wrote, hi, the 3 stakes that we were to go with JE on the plane. Sit, collect one from the frozen meat section that has been vacuum sealed, packed from a well-known vendor. If you have any questions, call. We'll bring the 3 stakes. What's your interpretation of that one, folks? Data set 9. Let's see. It hasn't changed in some time if you haven't yet, but you can put the other stakes in the freezer to keep them longer. Do note they take a full day to fall out. Then back to data set 10. Email from Leslie Groff. Subject stakes. For sure. Sent from my phone. And then to Francis Derby. To JE Steaks. A bag with 2 monster steaks were left on the plane. What? Good grief, Nick. You've done your homework here. Data set 10. It's not a problem. I'm just going to buy steaks on Saturday. It will be fresh. Forwarded message from Leslie Groff. And then to Anne Rodriguez. Steaks that were to go with JE on the plane sit here in the freezer at 71st is suggesting you or someone go. Collect one from the frozen meat section that has been vacuum sealed, packed from a well-known vendor. If you have any questions, we'll bring the 3 steaks. Steaks, data set 10, you have 4 steaks still on LSJ that came with you on the plane. Data set 9. JE would like me to get a new pan for steaks. Could you please advise what would be the best option for steaks? All right, interpret that as you wish, folks. I have no idea. I can only imagine. All right, let me keep going. I'm scrolling down. Got the Aquarium of Girls. Torture video. Hunting Humans. Should we do that one next? Yeah, let's do that one next. Bing. Let me just go back to the chat and see how you're all doing before I proceed to the Hunting Humans link. Yeah, thanks for that. Great streams from Ron and Sean. Yeah, thanks for that, guys. I'm watching this after. Yeah, Jay Dyer was on fire tonight in the stream. I think one of the best he's done with us so far. You know, we've been working with him for over 5 years now. And it just seems that he's learned so much over that time as well. All right. So this one's from @Smalls2672, who's saying he's in the Hunger Games portion of the Epstein Files Human Hunt. And the subject is Snipe Hunt is over, Moon Cricket in Field Bag. And then there's just some words in that I can't repeat on YouTube. So there's nothing else there that I can say. All right, let me keep going then. Genetic editing of babies. I think we've already covered that. All right, the Rothschilds paying Epstein $25 million. Going to go to that one next. And, you know, YouTube's got policies about talking about certain people, backing certain people, unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. And here we've got Jeffrey Epstein's contract with Rothschild's group for $25 million. Woof. Need to subscribe to these people, don't I? This is from @MyLordBebo, BEBO, verified account. October the 5th, 2015. Dear Jeffrey, you, on behalf of Sovereign Trust Company, Inc., a Virgin Islands Corporation, STC, have been collaborating with Ariane de Rothschilds on behalf of Edmond de Rothschilds Holdings, SA, collectively the Rothschilds Group, regarding risk analysis, Rothschilds Group, and the application and use of certain algorithms with respect to the same. The specified matters. The purpose of this letter agreement is to set forth the terms upon which you, on behalf of STC, will continue to work with the Rothschilds Group on the specific matters, the work. Point 1. The work STC shall provide, as further specified and agreed to between Jeffrey Epstein and Ariane de Rothschilds from time to time while this agreement remains in effect. Fees and expenses in consideration for the work, the Rothschild Group shall pay the following to STC. For work specifically relating to outstanding matters between Edmond de Rothschild's Holdings and the United States, $25 million payment shall be made by the Rothschilds Group to STC by not later than 3 days after EDRH makes payment to the US. The Rothschild Group shall reimburse STC for all travel and other out-of-pocket expenses incurred by you, STC, or your or STC's employees, representatives, agents, or advisors in connection with the performance of work under this agreement. Confidentiality. You and STC agree that any and all confidential information or proprietary information identified as such by Rothschild, which you are blah, 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 and it ends. So the next tweet says, Ariane de Rothschilds, French banker. And don't forget the Macrons, work for the Rothschilds as well. have done in the past. They're all bankers, just like the Italian government and Starmer, the lawyer, blah, 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 all working for the banking cartel. Anyway, this tweet says, Ariane, French banker, shared with Epstein that her family supported Hitler in mass destruction to gain more power, and also asked if he got her video with the girls. What? I'm just reading the emails, folks. This is crazy. Let's see what this says. All right. Monday, December the 31st, 2018. To Jay. Great. Did you get my video with the girls? This is from Ariane de Rothschilds. And then on Monday, and on 31st of December 2018, New Year's Eve. And then it's redacted to redacted to redacted. I know it's true, but regularly used to say Rothschilds planned and supported Adolf in mass destruction to gain more power. I'm in the Maldives also with a cold since yesterday. I've been diving a lot, 3 to 4 a day. Back in Europe, the third, Ariane de Rothschilds. And then first, it turns out to be 100% true. Adolf was selling his clothes and artwork and living in a shelter funded by Jews, Epstein, Rothschilds, and Gutman. No conspiracy. The Epsteins were the Vienna bankers, bought the bank on the ring, hence still Palais Epstein. Where are you? I'm in bed with your cold. And you know, over the years, we've exposed these people and the different layers, the structure. You know, from the get-go, we said Epstein was a mid-level manager. Glenn Maxwell brought in the contacts, and Epstein had the money given to him, you know, by Leon Black, Wexner, etc., for the benefit of the apparatus. As you go higher up, you go to the Wexners and all of these other people. And ultimately, though, above all of them is the banking cartel. And here in the DOJ documents, we've got communications to the banking cartel from Jeffrey. So the DOJ is verifying the exact same structure, the pyramid we've been talking about for years, that we've been called conspiracy theorists for going over. All right, I'll scroll down Nick Bryant's list and see if there's another one, another crazy one that we can go over, but I'm probably gonna have to come back. It's midnight here in the UK now. FBI report on viral video of Epstein torturing a young girl. Wow. Peter Thiel, tunnels, we've done the tunnels. Eva Dubin, the shrimp one. So we've not looked closer at the shrimp one, have we? We've done the steaks. Let's do the shrimp one next. All right, let's see. We've got Lauren coming on at 11, and then I think we've got Kevin Annette coming on at 7 tomorrow. And then we've got Andrew Loney and Chris Hansen of To Catch a Predator coming on Sunday and Monday. So we're going to keep going with this. All right, this email then is, let's see, from Oliver Collum to JEE Vacation. Jeffrey Epstein, June 18th, 2013. Title, I can't even think of the smell of black shrimp. Ugh. And then redacted, I like shrimp, but not so much if it's too pink. Although I'm definitely more into white than into any other color. I like your philosophy. What? Next email, Jeffrey Epstein. Subject re. No, some are like shrimp. You throw away the head and keep the body. And then, as long as, this is the next response, as long as you don't have any hammerhead ones, I like white sharks. It's crazy town, folks, isn't it? Crazy town. All right. Bedtime here in the UK. I've got a slew of more emails we can read tomorrow. Some of the darkest stuff. We will get into that when this video finishes. It will take you to the stream Ron did with Beverly and Danny if you missed it. Stay tuned for that one. Otherwise, hope to see some of you in the streams tomorrow. Thank you